Excellent. I am here with Vincent DiSanti, director of the Never Hike Alone series, which is a series of Friday the 13th fan films that is often regarded as some of the best horror fan films of all time. Uh, Vincent, the Jason Voorhees is still probably one of the most recognizable names in horror, despite not having a new film in almost 15 years. What about him appeals to you, and what makes him a lasting icon?
I mean, for me, Jason was the boogeyman growing up. In my sort of age frame, Friday the 13th was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, horror franchise on the planet. And I happened to grow up in a small wooded area by a lake. And so when I would be out playing with my friends after watching a Friday the 13th film, I would feel like I was in a Friday the 13th film. And so I was always used to be very much like mostly afraid of Jason because he seemed to be where I was. And over the years, I just like sort of fell in love with those movies. They were coming out one after another, and the story was always going in these wild directions. And then it sort of like kind of petered off, but I always just had a fascination with Jason. It was something with the hockey mask. It was something with the way that they did the effects in the films. And it was just the continuing nature of Jason he just keeps coming back, and all the films were wildly different. And I don't know, I fell in love with horror in general at a young age, but Friday the 13th just stuck out to me. And, I watched a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street. I watched a lot of Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and a lot of the classics, but Friday the 13th just stuck out. And Jason became that one that really resonated with me. I mean, I was petrified that he was at the bottom of a lake that I lived nearby and that he would grab my foot if I swam in the lake. And so I just think that because he was the one who tormented me the most, he became my favorite. And I think that to second part of that question, the way I think he's able to transcend is just the fact that Friday the 13th was and probably is still one of the most celebrated horror franchises of all time. It does transcend time and space. I think that there hasn't been any lack or want for a new Friday the 13th. There's just been so many things happening to the franchise that have kept it from coming back into the mainstream. So we've had to rely on the old films and looking back. And I think fans are sort of, pointing towards old films, but after Never Hike Alone, I think what you saw after that was fans rushing to sort of tell their own story and participate and see that in the absence of studios, basically continuing the story of Jason and Pamela and, anything you can tell the story of in Friday the 13th, that fans were the ones who were passionate about certain storylines and certain things that they wanted to tell. And you just saw the fan base take over the entire franchise for a little while and tell their own stories. And in a lot of cases, tell the stories that fans wanted to see more than the ones that the studios actually made. So it was a very interesting sort of time. But when when Crystal Lake got announced with Brian Fuller writing it, and that it's going to be on Peacock and it's going to be a series, I mean, there's immediate piqued interest. When the lawsuit got settled, there was immediate piqued interest about what's going to happen next. And I think it's nice to know that the fandom has been able to survive this long without coming up with a new film. And that just goes to show you how powerful of an icon Jason is. He has been already cemented into the sort of like horror hall of fame. It's Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Wolfman, and then you have your other tiers of Jason and Freddy and Leatherface and Michael and Pinhead, and these sort of these images that I think just resonate with horror audiences through all times. They're just timeless designs. They're timeless characters that we can all relate to. And it's just a matter of time before Friday the 13th comes back. That's sort of the power of the franchise. There's always another one there. So I'm definitely still anticipating an actual studio effort. I'm anticipating the Crystal Lake series. And in the meantime, I'm just happy that I've been able to entertain people with my version of Jason Voorhees based on my beliefs of the Friday the 13th franchise and what I thought would be a good storyline. Having the opportunity to work with Tom Matthews and Vinny Guastafaro and really kind of build on something from Tom McLaughlin's Part 6, and just my own personal preference of the Paramount series. And so you can get as nerdy as you want in Friday the 13th, but that's one of the great things. And I think what kept Friday the 13th alive was the fans and the discussion, was the fact that fans were going to the online forums in the late 2000s, early 20 teens, and then, they continue talking about it and doing cosplay and their own costumes. I mean, every time you go to a horror convention, there are 12 Jason costumes. Jason is probably one of the most popular cosplay Halloween costumes there are. It's because the design is just so simple, but it's so good. Um, and so you've seen, even though it hasn't been on the screen, Friday the 13th is very much, it's kept alive by its fans because of the way we discuss it, by the way we celebrate it. The fact that there are multiple Friday the 13th sometimes in a year, sometimes there's one, but when one comes around, it makes you think of the series. It's something that's always coming up. It's like a holiday in itself for a lot of horror fans. And I know it is for me. I celebrate Friday the 13th. Every time a Friday the 13th came up, there's a marathon, or I'm watching a movie, or they might be doing like an all-night marathon at a cool old theater downtown, and so you want to go and do that and hang out with other Friday the 13th fans, and you get to meet alumni and things like that. I think that because it's more than just a movie now, it's an event. It's an ability to connect with the characters from the films, the actors who portrayed those characters, and being able to sort of like, I don't know, go and celebrate the films. I think that's what it is. But I think that fans are sort of looking for something new, and that's why fan film sort of took off, because they were looking for something new. And when something came along that was even close to feature film sort of esque, I think that they were just happy to have something back. And I think since then we've seen a lot of filmmakers come out and say, I want to take my shot. And so we've seen a plethora of fan films kind of fill that void. And I think that's just a continuation of the same things from the earlier years for me in the internet wars were like talking about Friday the 13th, or like writing about Friday the 13th series. Now, I mean, Friday the 13th theory, what you're seeing now is people putting it into practice. So people are not just like sharing their ideas. Like, no, not only do I have an idea, I'm going to turn it into a movie, and I'm going to show you what I think Friday the 13th could be. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. And that's how it's been able to stay alive, is because there's so much to sort of, there's so many things to fall in love with in the Friday the 13th franchise, and then each individual thing kind of has its own fan base within the franchise. So then that's sort of the fun, is sort of the debate. And so I think that sort of debate, the diversity, the way that some people see the series versus what is Jason like, how did he come back from the lake, or how did he, and all these things and all these questions that got popped up by basically mistakes made by the filmmakers in the earlier films, has now spawned all of these like different threads where people want to answer those questions. And it just goes to show you how people got invested in these characters.
Yeah, excellent. Very well said. Now, your Never Hike Alone series is often considered the gold standard, not just of Friday the 13th fan films, but of Friday the 13th films, with many people saying it's better than some of the more controversial films in the series. What is it like to go from being a fan of the series to being a major creative name in the fandom?
It was a little surreal at first. I really only did it because I was trying to cheer fans up. It had been a long time since we had received a new film from the studios. We had a studio film canceled that year that Never Hike Alone came out. People hadn't seen Tom Matthews in a while, although he did, he was in the game. But I think what people wanted out of Friday the 13th was a return to the sort of the original stories. We sort of missed those, or we missed those characters, or we felt like those things kind of fell off. And when we got a chance to like weave Tom into the film and sort of touch that, like just kind of like even hint that we could tell a story with him, it was kind of a cool feeling. I think that was when I sort of knew that we were going to do something a little different. I wanted Tom to be that extra cherry on top at the end of the film that would be something for fans to celebrate. But after the film, and them enjoying that, and then seeing Tom, and then seeing the response that it had, and some of the write-ups that it got, it was sort of, for me, I don't know, it was just a really good feeling to see a lot of hard work by me and my friends get celebrated by fans. And I think that was the more important thing, is that we put a lot of hard work into it. We put a lot of time into it, made a lot of sacrifices. So anytime you do that, you at least hope that people like what you do. So the fact that people like it, the fact that people put it in their rankings and all of those things, it's just really humbling. And it's just, I don't know, it's the cool side effect of accomplishing, a long-term goal with with your friends when you know, at the beginning of the journey. I think what made it so funny to me is that like you would never think that that was possible. Everything you had ever heard about a fan film was not anyone ever saying that they wanted to recommend it, um or that it really appealed to anything outside like the real core fans. Like I would sit down and watch a fan film. I would love to see what people see, or like to do that stuff, but to see it kind of reach and even reach new fans and have people recognize it um is just, yeah, I don't know. All I can say is really humbling, and I'm just happy that people like it. And I just feel lucky that now, enough people have liked it over the years to give me a chance to really tell a big story with it, to complete sort of a bigger arc, and trust me with the storylines of Tom and Vinny and different characters. So we might get a Friday the 13th that sort of makes sense for once. It'd be kind of fun.
What has been your favorite moment during the creation of the Never Hike Alone series?
Hmm. I think my favorite moment would be going back to the original time where we found the camp. It was the most exciting moment that I could think of, because it was when all the possibilities sort of arose. Like at the beginning, we thought we were going to put together like this nice 5-minute sort of chase and kill sequence that we thought we could make cinematic, and just as a proving ground to be like, okay, I think we can do something a little bit bigger than this. When we found that camp, it was just, I mean, that I think what it has to do with is the fact that when we found the camp, we knew that it was going to change everything that we were doing, that we finally had an opportunity to really do something beyond cinematic, that we could tell more story, that we could take an audience on an adventure if we did it right. And it was going to be a lot of work. But the way that I've been sort of connected to that space ever since that camp, going back to it, even when we're not filming there, taking care of it and just sort of being there, I just sort of, we were very lucky to find it. And I find it was just a very much a part of the story that without that happening, none of the rest of this really isn't possible. But the way it happened was so organic, and it was a series of things over, a number of years. But yeah, the first time I walked in that camp, it was sort of, I knew we had something special, and I've been chasing that feeling ever since. And anytime I feel that about anything, whether it comes to the story or it comes to the production or anything we want to do with the Never Hike series, I just sort of follow that instinct to be like, anytime I felt like that, that's when I step forward with an idea.
Right. So many people still see fan films as being amateur productions, but you and many other filmmakers like the Horror Show Channel have been working to change that perception with well-acted and beautifully shot films.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the most important part of making a good fan film?
The preparation, making sure that you're set up to succeed on the days you're supposed to shoot, putting in the extra effort and the extra hours to make sure that the things that need to be there are there for you to be successful. And if a day is not organized, or if a production is not organized, or if a production is not properly motivated to go out and achieve a certain look, then that's when things start to fall short, when people leave things to the last minute, when they don't think ahead, or when emergencies pop up during the course of filmmaking because you weren't prepared in the first place. Now emergencies setting you back even further. The more prepared you are, the more you are to deal with things that are inevitably going to come up on set and slow you down. Each day is about capturing as much footage as possible and making it look as good as possible. And that means that the people that you're working with need the time on set to achieve with, proper, time management. So the more prepared you are, the more you just helps alleviate a lot of communication and setup time, and you can focus on getting the best version of your script as possible. The more time you get to work on your script in pre-production, things like that. But I think for us, it wasn't so much trying to change the perspective of fan films in a sense, because no matter what you're doing, whether it's a fan film, whether it's an original production, if you want to get the best production value for it, you need to, whether it's, no matter what it is, you have to put in that pre-production effort. And if you just go out with an idea on the weekend without much pre-planning, you're not going to get as something as well thought out and executed as something that has taken weeks or months to plan, um, and has been, discussed and communicated with the people that you're going to be collaborating with. And I would say that communication is that final part, because you can come up with a giant plan, but if you're the only one who knows it, then you're also going to be in trouble, because you're going to be trying to explain it to everybody all day. So it's not only a matter of being prepared, it's also informing those around you with the same preparation, and everybody being on the same page and moving forward. Communication is the ultimate, is the ultimate tool in all of filmmaking, no matter what level you're in, whether in pre-production, production, or post-production. Everyone needs to know the most up-to-date information as possible, but they also need to know the pitfalls, and they also need to know why things are happening. So if you have those answers, and the faster you have those answers, the faster the day goes. And so I think that people who get prepared and who show up with a very good plan for the day of shooting will have a lot more success than those who just sort of wing it and just want to have fun.
Excellent. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, the Friday the 13th franchise is no stranger to legal battles over rights. Are you ever concerned that Paramount, New Line Cinema, or any of the original writers or producers may demand that you stop?
It's always a risk. I mean, they could always step in at any time they want, no matter how, well, or no matter if we follow every rule to the letter, they could still come in and shut us down. And the rules are only there as guidelines, really. They're not like law. It's not in law that that's how it's supposed to be. Basically, any rights holders can dictate whatever rules they want for their franchise. We've been lucky for the fact that the Friday the 13th franchise, I think because of a lot of the legal issues they've been dealing with, don't want to deal with more. I also believe that Victor and Sean don't see fan films as a threat. I don't think the studios that handle the distribution and development for the studios, they don't see fan films as a threat. If anything, it's keeping the fan base alive. It's giving us something to do. If they took the fan films away, I think the Friday the 13th fans might riot, and they could deal with that, and they want to deal with that on their hands, then they can by all means do whatever they want. But at the end of the day, I just think that it doesn't bother them, and we really do benefit from, for all the things they're dealing with at that level, that the fan films are basically given a pass. And we've allowed to raise good budgets. We've been able to use alumni, and I think that if anything, it's been generating more interest in the franchise than detracting it. It's giving alumni more things to do, more posters to sign, more pictures to sign, more things to talk about, new things to talk about with fans at conventions, where it's not just talking about the films from the 80s and the 90s now they can talk about films that they shot 2 weeks ago. Now they can talk about the films that are coming out right now and the future of the franchise, and getting filmed, getting fans interested in something that's actually happening. And it's not costing the studios anything. A lot of the storylines that you're seeing, generated by fans aren't ones that the studios have ever really contemplated putting into production. And when they have been put on the docket to be put in for production, they've been struck down. They've been said no, they don't want to go that direction. So, it's not like anyone's stealing any ideas from the studios. They haven't really had one in over a decade that they've wanted to take all the way to production. So, I think that the studios sort of recognize that. They probably keep an eye on it, I think, for safety, and they should. But at the same time, I think that what we're doing really isn't a threat, and hopefully they remain to see that way. And since this is going to be our last sort of entry into it, I'm just hoping that we can get the film out and that we can just let fans have it, and it will be for free on YouTube, and we can move on to our original stuff afterwards. But the fans that want to follow in our footsteps, and other fans that want to do their own Friday the 13th fan films, I hope they're also given that free opportunity, even when stuff starts to come back. And even come up with branches of stuff that's on TV too might be kind of fun. I don't know. Let the fans get involved. I think the more the fans are involved, the better it is for the entire franchise.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Yeah. Any last thoughts about where the Friday the 13th franchise is going and what you hope for the future? Like
Um,
like
yeah, what I really hope for the Friday the 13th franchise in the future is that they get a good game plan going forward. That I feel like the series is in good hands with Brian Fuller. From what I understand, he has a few seasons figured out already, and that's good because Friday the 13th is built on the fact that for some reason the films and the stories keep going. So the more rope they can give themselves, the better. And I think if when they come out with a feature film, they got to think ahead as well. They can't be writing it film by film, that when they're writing the first film, they got to be thinking about the second and the third and possibly the fourth. And that they should package it that way and expect that if they come up with something that's franchise level, that fans will show up and support a franchise. They're not just there for one movie, they're there because they want to be there for multiple movies. And I feel like that is the studio's biggest mistake, is they've been coming up with ways to either end the franchise or have a one-off film from the franchise and not thinking ahead to multiple films. So I'm looking forward to a studio stepping in and coming up with and being confident in the fact they have a game plan to pitch to fans and say, listen, we're coming at you with 3 films. They've already been figured out, or we're going to figure them out before we shoot the first one. So here it comes. And then we can expect that sort of Avengers style, like, okay, 2024, 2025, 2026, we're getting Friday the 13th every single year. And it will become an event every year. And I think that that's, again, kind of looping it back to that. Like Friday the 13th is an event film, and they need to build these into event films, and it needs to be bigger and bolder, and it needs to push the horror franchise a little bit further. So this is the characters to do it around. And I hope off of that, we see the Peacock series take off. I'd like to see Friday the 13th in animation. I know Walks on Films is going to be pushing Friday the 13th in that direction for our own fan films in the future. So I don't know. I just hope that once the rights are sort of figured out and everybody knows who's getting paid what, that we can just start generating more content and feeding fans with more Jason and Pamela and everything Crystal Lake and Friday the 13th.
Right, excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for speaking with me, and we're all looking very forward to the upcoming film.